Contemplation before chanting. The Sangha is invited to come back to our breathing so that the collective energy of mindfulness will bring us together as an organism, going as a river with no separation. Let the whole Sangha breathe as one body, chant as one body, listen as one body, transcending the boundaries of the elusive self, liberating us from the superior complex, the inferiority complex, and the equality complex.
With heart established in mindfulness, we are truly present for sitting and walking meditation and for reciting the sutras. May this practice center with its fourfold Sangha be supported by the three jewels and holy means, well protected from the eight misfortunes and the three types of suffering. May parents, teachers, friends, and all beings within the three realms be filled with the most divine grace, and may it be found that in the world there is no place at war. May the winds be favorable, the rain seasonable, and the people's hearts at peace. May the practice of the noble community, diligent and steady, ascend the 10 bodhisattva stages with ease and energy. May the Sangha body live peacefully, fresh and full of joy, a refuge for all, offering happiness and insight. The wisdom of the awakened mind shines out like the full moon. The body of the awakened one is pure and clear as crystal. In the world the awakened one relieves bitterness and suffering. In every place the awakened mind reveals love and compassion. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye
Good morning. Today is Sunday, May the 5th, 2019, and we are in the Big Togetherness Meditation Hall at the Blue Cliff Monastery. And I got the chance to share the Dharma with you today. Next week I will be away from Blue Cliff Monastery for the weekend. So I thought maybe I got the chance to share about the love of mother, particularly my mother, and also maybe talk about the habit energy and how to transform them as well. Let me go to the board. Do you have a clock around here? Watch. So to me, mother for me is the first teacher of love. I have been meditate a little bit, and sometimes I see some image in my dream of me cuddling close to the breast of my mother. And I did ask and confirm my mother did nurse me. So probably around 2 or 3 years old. I don't remember when I was maybe 3 months or 6 months old or something, because that was too early in memory. Most of our cognitive memory is around 3 to 5 years old. But I saw the picture, I think probably after my mother gave birth to me. They probably put me against her body, the cuddle, just to get the motherly love. And ever since, I think I learned a lot of about love through my mother. Some of us may have some difficulty relationship with mother or father, and some of them have a mix, but I think most of the time, mother always loves her children. It's sometimes that she might or she might not be able to express the love in a certain way, and or maybe, but to me, if you are fortunate enough to have a good mother who care for you and who are the first teacher of love. And I think also, I remember also is my mother is also the teacher of knowledge. My mom was born on July 1918. I think she passed away on July 29, 2009, just before the US tour that I was organizing. And she went to a decent school, and she trained to be a primary teacher. And she has 6 children, and me being the youngest of the family. So more reason for her to cuddle up to me. And I remember she taught me many things. I remember one of the most memorable is she taught me the multiplication table. She repeated and asked me to repeat many times. I think it's almost like a whole month of summer until I remember everything about multiplication table. So I have a lot of affinity for mathematics, and I like physics as well, even though I end up being in more humanity and financial background. And to me, we go to school and we have teachers in primary school, kindergarten, middle school, high school. But mother and father are also a great teacher at home. So sometimes that's a role that the elder in the family should give more attention to the children at home. We live by example, and we correct the children and encourage them to develop their talents at home, much more than depending on the teacher in school. So let me give the board a lot easier. So for me, if I look on deep looking and I look inside, the first thing that comes to mind is for my mother, for the good quality of my mother, is her intelligence. So I think to me, she has a very all-around intelligence, probably from her parents. My maternal grandfather, he's like a forestry officer, taking care of the forest and the trees. And she put my mother in a good school. At that time in Vietnam, it called École des Filles Indigènes. That's the precursor to the Yalong school. I don't know what the latest name after 75 because I left, but I think at that time it was one of the good schools that parents put their children to school for. And they train mostly for people to be a good housewife. That's a different generation. Remember, it's 1920, 1925, so this is a different generation. And they taught all the skill, the art and craft necessary for a person to run a household. So sewing, embroidery, cooking, gardening, all the other things. And I think I know some area northeast, I think also the parents teach their children to be very well versatile in all area of household, how to take care of home. But in addition, my mother asked also to get another education in teaching children. So she become a primary school teacher as well. And another thing I noticed also is after she married my father was a successful businessman. He do import-export. So he traveled quite a lot. So my mother accompanied my father very often. So she very well traveled, so she has a lot of knowledge. She kind of served as advising to him about different things. So she developed a great intelligence along with my father. So she know about agriculture because at one time my father will set up a plantation of coffee and tea to compete against the French. And also she learned all along with him. She speaks perfect French because when she went to school, she learned directly from the French teacher, just like I do. My father, even though he studied in France, but when he was young, he learned from a Vietnamese teacher. So his accent is a little bit more Vietnamese. So I think to me, the second thing I noticed also is she's very charming and she has a lot of elegance, grace, something you call it. So she has a lot of beauty. She can be elegant like Sister Joy. Welcome, Sister Joy here. But she's a lot smaller. She small like Sister Trường Nghiêm, Sister Thăng Nghiêm kind of thing. Very, very tiny and small. But she has a wonderful beauty if you can see her picture when she was young. And of course she played the big lady to my father at different events, you know, bà lớn. So she has to have that elegance, that charm that she role to play it. And along with that, she learned everything along in the society and everything she needs to do. The third one I think I noticed is she has a lot of stability and she has a lot of skillfulness. She knows how to have a composure because when you are in a socialite in society, you have to behave a certain way that's acceptable to the norm. She learned how to be tactful and not to react to different situations. She has a very measured response. And of course, like I mentioned, she went to school when they learn similar to, I think in the US, they call the 4H. That means head, hand, heart, and hygiene. And it's very similar to what our teacher was training the School of Youth and Social Service, which is the precursor of the OI order member, to train people how to maintain a good household on the countryside and so on. I remember after I ordained, I sit with her, I went to visit her for a couple of weeks, and I asked her, you know, about father, because by then my father passed away, and I asked her, do you have any disagreement with father? And she say, yes, sometimes we have disagreement. We have different way of handling the situation. But I make the point of never to disagree with father in front of the children. I would keep to myself, I would hold it, and I meditate on that. And in the evening, when we are alone in the room, she would tell my father that she disagreed on him about certain aspect. So I think to me, that's a very good, skillful, not to interject right away and say something, but then wait until you get the chance to reflect and see the situation. And if you still believe strongly about your point of view, and you can express to your loved one that this is what I think. And my teacher is like that too, and my father also listened and value her input, her advice. Another thing about my mother is she is very generous and she is very compassionate. My father, he's agnostic, so he's allergic to institutionalized religion. So he kind of dabble a little bit in the humanity, helping other people, but he could not fit into rigidity of the dogma of whatever religion is and how they organize things. My mother is a devout Buddhist, but she used her intelligence to understand certain things and not to follow blindly to what everybody was saying. So part of it, she's very generous to help other people. My father was fairly successful in the early days, so the family can help a lot of family members and so on. I remember she was vegetarian for more than 50 years. Even though I was young, she already started to be vegetarian. But she never pushed the family, or father, or the children to eat vegetarian. She would cook vegetarian for her, but she would cook regular food for everybody at home, unless they ask for. I remember sometime I'm curious, so I asked her, can I try some vegetarian dish with you? And she would gladly share with me. And I think to me, another thing I thought about it, when she has a skillfulness and composure, she has a lot of insight. She's insightful. I don't know where she got it, whether she meditate or she have intuition or something, because she's like the protector of the family. She's behind my father, and my father is very good humor person. He's an entrepreneur. He likes to do thing after another one. He fairly successful. Basically, he's went to study Beaux-Arts, which is art in France in the very early day. And at that time, photography was the big deal. It's like an internet thing. So he learned about photography and he brought photography back to Vietnam. So at that time, there was very few competitors. He was very successful. And the thing is, he's a good heart, and often in business, people took advantage of him. And, steal some money. And my mother advised him about it. When she sees something happening, she would tell him, I think this person has tried to take advantage of him. So that way, she would help him a lot. And even though she doesn't come often to temple, but she read and she study Buddhism, and she know about how to behave in the compassionate way, and how karma affect other people. And she know how to transform her suffering. Having 6 children is not easy, because something happened here and there to some children, and you are bound to feel the pain and the suffering when they encounter. Being a mother, you never escape from that. One of my elder brother, he's very successful. He's a doctor. He's a limb oxygenation, and also he do acupuncture. But he has some difficulty in his life, and stress and things. So he probably has a seed what we call of depression. He got about the depression, and he tried to struggle for about 6 years on and off. We came, we visit him, we support his family, but after about 6 years, he thought it was too much for him to handle. So he did commit suicide. And it was sad for the family, but it's maybe a lot more suffering for her, for the mother to lose a child fairly young and due to depression. But she maintained a lot of composure. She went to visit his family. She stayed with my sister-in-law and her 2 sons, which is my nephew, and she tried to comfort them and be there for them. Of course, for her as a mother, she suffered, but she knows how to transform it. I think to me, that's the thing I admire her a lot about, how she can have stability. I think probably some example I see recently is we went to Wangim Monastery very often in Washington, D.C., and one of the lady, Bác Trần Nhơn, is a kind of similar kind of mold of my mother. She always polite, educated, have composure, graceful, moderate in her speech, but yet she encountered and she weathered a lot of difficulty. Recently, Bác Trần Nhơn husband passed away, and within 6 or 9 months, one of her daughter also passed away. So she went to Vietnam to console and comfort the spouse of her daughter. Right after, still maintain grief about her husband passing away. I have dealt with her many times for 8 years, and I can see her good education and good behavior, and how she deals with difficulty. And I think that's something that often parents and children nowadays don't have that kind of close communication, and how to teach the young one how to behave in difficult situations. Of course, at the monastery we do have it, so hopefully we can cover that a little bit later. And the last one I just thought about it is my mother is my elder Dharma sister, Siji, and also she happened to be Sumaya, my mother too. So after my father passed away, my mother said, well, I have enough of it. I love father, and I bore for him 6 children, and now he's no longer here. I don't want to be with any other man, and I want to devote my life to spiritual practice. So she started to study a lot about the sutra and so on, and she went to Plum Village when it was formed on the very first time in around 1984, 85. And then she decided to become a nun. So she ordained as a novice nun, but she lived far from Plum Village. I remember she shared she went to Plum Village in the early day, and she's fairly old, having retired already, and by the time my father passed away. And she say it's too rustic in Plum Village in the early day. They have 4 bricks and like a wooden door. And they put some blanket on top, and that is your bed. So I went to Plum Village 2002, and I can feel that there are certain very rustic air to that. We have improved a lot about the housing condition and heat and also everything. So she ordained at home, and by then she has some illness here and there, and she lived near to my sister, my elder sister, and she took care of her, what she did to, and she go to the temple for ceremony a weekend like this to help out with the temple. So for me, when we have New Year touching the earth, when we say, some of the nuns, your elder sister, younger sister, your mother, I have no problem with that because it's very real. And often we share a lot about the Dharma when I go to visit her about the transformation of suffering and so on. I have bad writing, so it helped me a lot. It saved time too. So you heard mother is love and mother is sacrifice. Of course, you can see so many examples of mother sacrifice herself to care and to nurture the children. But also, to me, also mother is habit energy as well. So we inherit from our great-grandparents, our parents, and we carry on that habit energies. Sometimes they are positive habit energies, sometimes they're neutral, sometimes they're negative habit energy. And whether we know the practice or not, it's up to us to transform it when we are living. But having 6 children, I think her primary role is to nurture and protect the children and family. She has very little time for other things besides learning the knowledge, the skill necessary to care, to nurture the children, to give them good education. So 3 of my eldest brother and sister, she nurtured them to educate them, so they went to study overseas. In France and in Switzerland, and become very successful person, and later on she helped to sponsor my parents and my sister. So the 3 of us, younger brother, sister, by that time my father's business went bankrupt because of the war. They lose a lot of money, so they couldn't afford to send us to study overseas. So I think to me, it goes to say that my mother need to devote a lot of effort, attention to care for her children and her family. And being a mother is always have a fear of losing children or the loved one, or even the possession that help to protect them. And this is even in the animal kingdom as well as all human beings. So you couldn't help but being partial to the safety, to the well-being of your children. And in the process, you can develop anxiety and greed. By fear. I remember recently we have a case in Vietnam of a famous owner of Vina Cafe, I'm not sure what is coffee in Vietnam. They're a very successful producer of coffee in Vietnam. And the wife separate from the husband, and they have a big court case. And basically, what the wife was, even though she has a lot of money, she was asking for more money to care for her children. And I think they become very public and like a scandal kind of thing, because again, it's all about caring for children. But sometimes it doesn't help the children to have like a sports car or have a private airplane. I think what they need is a basic education, a basic intelligence of the household, having composure, and also have generosity and produce insight. I think that's the most important. Education has a role to play, but learning how to be a better human being, I think, is the most important. And in the process of worry about the children, anxiety, greed, you develop your ego. What is mine? What is my children? Mine possession, and the ego along with that. So I thought about sharing with you about how we can see the different choice we made in life. Often, as a young man or woman, we have a dream of having a small hut. There was many songs, when you find your loved one and you have children and you live everly happy after. The fairy tale usually doesn't talk about after you get married, what happened, So, and then of course, it helped to have a big account, to help with the families, to raise. But unbeknownst to us, karma has a way of working. Often we encounter a lot of situations when it doesn't happen exactly the way we want. I remember we have a younger brother. He went back to lay life and he married. And after a while, he found out that his wife's family want a little bit more, because he couldn't have a good education or good job. And it all has to do with how you can nurture, protect children, and having that kind of fear about happening in the future. So often our dream of having a small family, having children, take care of children, many people can be happy, but not everybody are all happy about it. So the exception to the path is to take the monastic path, which is more universal love. So we develop the 4 types of love: từ bi hỷ xả, So loving kindness, Maitri, and compassion, Karuna, and also altruistic joy and equanimity. And this kind of love lasts more and is more inclusive. You can add more people. We recently have a retreat for order interbeing member. And those people have their family. They have children, they take care of them, but also they aspire to give greater love. So they join what we call the order interbeing, which is, the name suggests that we are all interconnected. And not only you can love your children, you can take care of children, but also you expand your love, your care to other people, to other children as well. So I think to me, the monastic usually aspire to that kind of universal love. And probably the easy example is Mother Teresa. Her devotion to help the poor, the needed, the dying, and without asking anything in return. And she has some belief. I read some book. She has often doubt about different belief, but regardless, for her, the care for the poor, the destitute, is her primary purpose. And for that, she has a very great strength in doing that. So for the regular family, we build a nest, and we have two spouses. Sometimes we complicate, we divorce 1 or 2 or 3 times, and we have many stepfather, mother, and all kind of things. We have other siblings. But for us, monastic, we live in a community of love, of practitioner. And I remember there was one sentence, very obscure, that I want to share at the OI retreat. I didn't have time. There was something that from now on, your own awakening and liberation is the highest aim of your career. And it's only at the transmission of 14 mindfulness that has been read. I look in the book, I think most of the book don't talk about it. So I think to me, when we aspire to become monks and nuns, we have that thing when we develop awakening and liberation for ourselves as well for others. And in the same token, we develop that insight that help us to see clearly and to react to different situations, and to see the interconnectedness of everything. So having that antidote, it helps us to deal with the habit energy, the desire to have your own children. Because the energy is very strong to guide it toward what happens if somebody express your love to me and we flatter, and the person say, I want to marry you. And so often many younger monastic are really lured into that belief. But if you know that you can express your love, you can continue without having biological children, then that need, that drive is not as strong as in this case when we form our own family. When we form our own family, there's certainly a lot of joy, but also there are trial and tribulation that come along with that. We have a share for the better or for worse, I think. That's the word they say. And if you know that you can continue through other people, then you're not bound to only to take the path of the family life, of children life. So we take refuge in something more stable. The refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And it has like a name that sometimes people are allergic to, like maybe my father would be allergic to. But when you look at, you say the Buddha is a capacity to be awakened in all of us. And that's something that we can, through help, through guidance, we can have our own awakening to our own nature. And the Dharma is the teaching, just like I share with you about it, how to understand deeply the teaching, how to understand deeply about our human nature. And the Sangha is a community of love, community of practice. The fourfold Sangha means monks and nuns, laymen, laywomen. And we can stop the negative habit energy by practicing on a daily basis mindful breathing, mindful step, and also mindful action and mindful speech. And that is the three parts about what we call a stopping. So we can look deeply into our own being, our own suffering, our own internal function in our mind, in our body, and learn how to look deeply and understanding and develop new neural path. So in the community, we water the seeds of goodness in ourselves. We water the seeds of love from one member to the other. We water the seed of joy. We water the seed of happiness. And through interconnectedness, through collective energy, we slowly transform ourselves and we create new neural path. And we change it, this negative habit energy into good habit energy. So it's very concrete how we do it. And this is what I've been doing. I practice, so I help my mother to transform her habit energy. I practice, so I help transform my father's habit energy and my great-grandparents and so on. You know. So the benefits are very clear. Through the practice of mindful breathing, mindful step, and mindful action, we slowly have the ability to rewrite our brain, to be calmer, and to be less reactive. By that, we learn not to make so many mistakes. Often we hurry about doing something and we try to solve one problem and we ended up create another problem. And often we create we call bad relationship. And often we have to mend the relationship, we have to go back and try to change. We regret about our mistakes. So sometimes it takes time to be slow, to be purposeful, to be clear, and before making decision in life, especially the big decision. So we can not to make so many mistakes. And the other thing about the daily practice is we are what we repeatedly do. So it's a matter of habitual energy, how we do every day, a little bit every day, a little bit every day. So living in community of practice help a lot because everybody aspire to live the same way. And through osmosis, we transform ourselves and we slowly develop a new neural path of happiness, of joy. Is Glidey here? Yeah. Glidey went through a lot of suffering. And she has been a member of our community for the last 12 years. And she slowly transformed a lot of neural path. And she will love joy and happiness. One of those days she can help to share with us. So 3 of the big obstacles to liberation in my view is first the obstacle of desire and of greed and affliction, and through negative action, negative speech, we create bad karma. And the thing is, because you are bound to have a bond of family. In Vietnamese, we have a word we call, we say duyên nợ. It's the karma and the debt, karmic debt that you have to pay. And often parents sometimes say that I don't know what I own my children, but now I have to come back and pay the debt to take care of my children, especially when the children give them a hard time. So as long as you have children, grandchildren, and things like that, you are bound to have some kind of desire, some kind of greed from fear, anxiety, how to take care of your children, your grandchildren. So you're not totally free. There's a lien, there's a bond with that. And having to be able to take away from that bond to be free. And that's what to me, in Asian, we have a saying that when someone become monastic, we rejoice, we are very happy because that young man or that woman free themselves from the bond of karma and devote their life to the practice and to liberation. The other one is the obstacle of knowledge, especially knowledge without insight. I'm not against knowledge, but I think you have to have useful knowledge. If you read the book, Understand Our Mind by our teacher, they explain a lot about it, about how our consciousness, our mind operate, and how we can learn with the insight how to deal with it. So we can use the knowledge to our advantage. For example, I have a knowledge of French, I have a knowledge of English, I have a knowledge of Spanish, of Vietnamese. I can use it to express the Dharma, but not be bound to that. And of course, the primary practice for us, having mindful breathing, mindful step, is to develop insight, in and out, so it helps to guide us through life. The other knowledge having to do with culture, taboo, do's and don'ts, and rituals, customs. Often there's some good aspect to that, but often we develop those rituals from way in the day of Stone Age and so on. And some has been modified, some are not. And we still hold to the belief that certain way is wrong, certain way is right, and it varies from culture to culture, from the thing. For me, it helped for me to know different culture. For me, when I learn foreign language, I become a different person. So the French might think differently from what the Vietnamese would think about the food and so on. And when I come to America, the American think differently how we behave, different from Asian people. And our knowledge from the Vietnamese language also, the old ancient Vietnamese use Chinese character. So part of it, I'm curious about learning Chinese character is also to learn Mandarin and to see how the Chinese would think. So I'm not really bound to any fixed culture. I can change from time to time and not be bound by that. For to me, that helped me a lot to have that obstacle of knowledge to overcome that. And of course, the last thing is the most important, the obstacle of the illusion of self, of the separate self. Of course, we live in the historical dimension where there is a self, there's other, there's the before, there's the after, but also parallel to that, there is the ultimate dimension. And if we keep practicing about deeply into mindful breathing, mindful step, being mindfulness every time, from time to time we have a glimpse of the interconnected of everything. And that frees us from that bound of having to have biological children, that you can continue through other means, that you continue. Our teacher doesn't have any biological children, but look how much he's beneficial, how many spiritual children he would have, and how much influence he have all over the world, including the US Senator who come to visit his temple just recently. So his work is very great, and you don't need to be bound by the biological children. And so having that insight help to free ourselves from the bond of idea about self and learn how to let go. So to me, I'm very grateful for my parents, for my mother. Today I share about my mother. Of course, another time I will share about my father on Father Days. But I think to me, I greatly love and respect my mother, not only because she's my biological mother and also the teacher of love, of knowledge, but she also happened to be my elder Dharma sister. And she teach me the Dharma and how to behave, how to think. She do instantly without having knowledge of all the Dharma. After I become a monk, I gave her a lot of books and tape from our teacher. So at home, she would study, she would practice a lot, and I think she get very peace in her passing away, and knowing that she have sent her children and her being into the wonderful path, the monastic path. I remember we sit one time at the table, and then she was sharing. She said, well, I love Father, and I gave him 6 children, which is all of you, and you become successful and things like that. And I'm happy with that, but now I don't want any more to that cycle. I want to become a nun, and in my next life, I want to become a monk so I can attain liberation. She has a certain idea of somebody planting in her head that a woman cannot attain liberation, that you have to go back to the next life to become a monk in order to get liberation. So I sit across the table, I listen to her a little bit, and I say, Mom, I don't think you need to wait until your next life, because I'm your next life. And I was your monk. So you all said. So she become quiet a little bit while she thought about, and has a big smile on her face. That she realized, well, you know, we interact, and I'm her next life, and I already practiced it. So with that knowledge, with that insight, I think she passed away peacefully. Thank you.